If there's one thing that I can say with Grimoire Zero is that Zero herself is a very lewd character and I quite enjoy it. Episode 3 is actually a fairly enjoyable episode. I think it was a step up from episode 2. Not to say episode 2 was bad, but like mentioned, it felt a little off in last week's review. I just felt like something was a little weird with it, and when I was talking with one of my friends, he mentioned something that kind of triggered what I thought it was. It kind of felt like this, or last week's episode, a lot of the dialogue felt like these characters knew one another for longer than they did at the episode 2 point. And episode 3 still does the same thing. Like, it feels like these characters are getting along far too well for having just met one another, and also having this divide with different species and just witches, you know, beast fallen. It feels like they are a little too close together when they should not be trusting one another at this point in time. It's still enjoyable, but this feels like we're at like the episode 7 mark, and the way they're interacting with one another feels like they've known each other for a few months. That's my issue with the series so far, is it feels like the progression in how the characters are interacting is very, I don't want to say like it's unbelievable, but it kind of is. Like, despite this not being a realistic setting, it just feels like we skipped a few chapters. But even with that said, I think the dialogue this week's episode was far better than last week. I felt like it was a very simple episode, but it served much more of a purpose than last week's episode. Like, I mean, at the core, Zero herself, she loves Mercenary. Like, this girl, like, is just all about, like, sleeping on his fur. She has some sort of crush on this dude, right? I think I'm the only one thinking this. But at the core, you know, Mercenary is a pretty decent guy overall. He doesn't want people to suffer. He wants to help people in need. And this episode is fairly basic. We're in the town now, and essentially, there is some beast fallen who aren't that good. And we get to learn a bit more about them, too, where a lot of the reasons the humans are afraid of beast fallen is actually because apparently the beast fallen have the tendency to randomly just want to eat humans. They have this animal lust that sometimes triggers, so that's why a lot of these humans won't even give them the chance of day, because they don't want to have them or their kids eaten alive because they just have this urge. So I like that bit of information, but we get to see some of the other beast fallen and how they just abuse humans, like literally this one beast fallen having pretty much slaves, sex slaves, which ties into a pretty funny joke at the beginning of the episode where Zero says that herself and the other guy are literally mercenary sex slaves, which that shit was funny. But it's good to see kind of the difference in characters between someone like Mercenary and this like wolf beast fallen guy who's literally just a piece of shit, just keeping these women hostage and abusing them, probably also sexually as well. And I just kind of like the progression of just Mercenary kicking his ass, and to the kind of like final reveal of Zero literally removing all of the beast fallen aspect to this character except like the head and the arms, or she might have just removed the fur. It just kind of looked to me like she put him back into a human form except the head, like the arms and like the legs. Like, it was just like a normal, you know, ripped abs kind of guy. So he pretty much is stripped down to bare nothing. Now granted, she might have just removed his fur, but still, the joke stands. It was pretty funny to just kind of throw it back into his face. Like, the episode overall, it was nothing that extraordinary, but damn was it fun. I think the overall banter, there was a lot of sexual like kind of jokes and innuendos that I thought were pretty funny myself, but at the core it was a very basic episode, but it was kind of just to progress more, to show who Mercenary himself is while giving a bit more details to the beast fallen in the world itself, but also just kind of, it was just kind of a carefree adventure in the town episode. But like I mentioned, it does feel like we're farther in the season when we actually are. We're only at episode 3, and the way these characters interact feels like we're already at the episode 6 or 8 mark, which maybe I'm the only one feeling it, but definitely feels like they're too much of a close-knit group at this point in time. But I mean, the bonus of them already being like this means that the remainder of the season will progress differently than a lot of shows, but it is something that is a little weird and jarring at times. But luckily they definitely improved and got rid of the flaws that I thought last week's episode had, and made this to be a fairly enjoyable episode, and has my interest like the first episode did back when I originally watched this. So I thought it was an overall fun episode. If you enjoyed the first episode, you're probably enjoying this episode, and even if you had any enjoyment with last week, you're probably still enjoying this. I think it was a pretty good episode, and Grimoire Zero is just a really cool high fantasy setting, having a character like Mercenary who is basically a beast fallen. He is a Khajiit from, you know, Skyrim, things like this. You know, it's interesting to have a character like him. Zero herself is nothing out of the ordinary, but she's still a fun character overall. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think of the episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or do you think it was just okay? And do you agree with me? The way these characters are interacting feels like we're further ahead in the season than we actually are, or am I the only one feeling that? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and before I leave, hit the like button, share your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.